What up, world? Waxvillain, Seattle, Washington. You already know what it is. Welcome to Waxvillain Fireside Chat. We got Jared, Wayne, Colby, Nashville, Tennessee. He's here to talk to us about new music from Mount Woercester. Keep it locked. We'll kick things off soon. Appreciate everybody on the line. We see it. Yeah. Jared's gonna be here real soon. Super stoked. What up, Bobo? We see it. Yeah. Everybody pulling up for this one. Can you tell me what's your reason for forcing my sister, shooting that brother? Alana Royale in the building. We appreciate you, sis. About to send this request real quick. Look who popped in the building. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Yo, what's going on, my friend? How you out?
I'm fantastic. I love the backdrop. I see the guitars. You got the hardware behind you.
That's right. That's
very cool.
All the shit that went into making the record hanging on the wall.
Love that. How's the weather out there today?
Man, I'll tell you, I spent all day outside today. It was like, midday. It was almost like 100 degrees, and it was amazing. I love the I love the sun. I love just being hot as hell all the time. So I took today to just kind of stain some shelves for my kitchen. So that's
cool.
What I was getting to do today.
Would you believe me if I told you that it rained in Seattle today?
Man, I was gonna ask you, did it rain?
It was one of those days.
Yeah, I feel you. Yeah, the only time I was in Seattle, it rained both days. So yeah, that checks out for sure.
All right. I see we got about 8 on the line. If you're ready, I'll go ahead and kick things off.
Yeah, you know what? The sun's actually going to go down in about 20 minutes, so let me just kind of move one of my lights so you can kind of see my face. So
yeah.
Give me like 1 second here.
Absolutely.
It's kind of the cool thing of figuring out how to do stuff from your house, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, man.
All right, cool. I will stay lit up, my friend.
All right. I want to welcome everybody to Waxvillain Fireside Chat. Fireside Chats are similar to interviews. However, we take the time to do the research so that we're not duplicating efforts, but more importantly, supporting and strengthening other existing articles and interviews out there. We got about 9 questions. We got show and tell. I'm so excited, y'all. Today, we are joined by Jared, Wayne, Colby, Nashville, Tennessee. Now, my introduction to Jared just comes by way of keep my head on a swivel. I've been watching the indie scene, and this guy has been just active, whether it's playing with Alana Royale, Second Spirit, and, of course, Mount Woercester.
Yeah, you did it.
He's been very active on the scene. He's got new music coming out. A single by the name of Contigo is this genre-bending funk soul music that I'm really excited about. He's got a show with the Jizza coming up. I'm so excited to have him and hear more. Jared, welcome, man. So happy to have you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me, man. It's definitely an honor, for sure. It's awesome.
Absolutely. So, I just told everybody you're from Nashville, Tennessee. You're a part of multiple bands. But I'd really like to start with what kind of got you into music? Can you take us back to that very first moment that you fell in love with music, what it was that moved you so much to kind of take things to the next level?
Yeah, sure. So So I grew up in Worcester, actually, in Worcester, Massachusetts, which
Okay.
is just for people that don't know, about 45 minutes outside of Boston. And I actually remember the exact moment that I wanted to play music. I was watching Green Day on Woodstock '94 on MTV, and so yeah, so that was the moment. They were having the mud fight, and they were doing like this, that, and the other, and I was just like, man, this seems like the coolest shit in the world. And at that moment, I didn't know how to play an instrument yet, but I think I grabbed like one of my mom's like tennis rackets and just like air guitared around the room. I was like 8 years old or something like that.
Wow. What kind of music
Yeah.
did you listen to growing up as a kid?
It was definitely like MTV was huge for me.
Hmm.
It was definitely, a ton of hip hop and a ton of grunge. And it was like that until, from when I was old enough to, pick up my own music and whatever, not just listen to, whatever my parents were listening to. It was that until about the time I was like 14, and then I got really into the hardcore scene in Massachusetts, which is like really what there is to do there musically for sure. It's aside from GA20, every other band I know from Massachusetts is a hardcore band.
Sure, sure.
Yeah.
How did it
Yeah.
come to choosing like instruments?
So really what it was like when I first started playing with some kids in the neighborhood, when I was super young. Actually, my cousin Matt just joined, and I'm actually
Shout out
about
to
to
Matt.
mention him. So we were gonna get a band together when we were kids. I was like 12 and he was 11, and I knew a guitar player from down the street, and so I was like, well, I'll pick up bass, and I kind of was like, you should get drums. He's like, you're right, I should. And so that was the thing for sure. And then we just like learned a bunch of songs, and just like played them pretty poorly until we didn't play them poorly anymore. You know what I mean? It's
Wow.
like that
Okay.
kind of thing. And it was definitely like growing up playing like, playing Knights of Columbus halls, playing VFWs, stuff like that. Like that was
Wow.
huge back then for sure. And it was amazing. Like everyone from the scene could go. So no matter what you were doing musically, you always had a crowd of like, you know, 50 to 100 people every time you played, and it didn't matter who was playing. Everybody just showed up because it was just what to do. You know what I mean? And so it was awesome. It was all different genres. It was all different kinds of bands, and it really, it really influenced me, and I really learned a lot really quickly. So that was so that was kind of my intro into it, really. My probably my first 5 shows were like VFW and Knights of Columbus shows.
Wow. It's funny when you said 50 to 100, I kind of know that size when it comes to being in a room on the indie scene. That's a good number of people to perform in front of, especially when you're first starting out. So I can imagine that must have been really exciting and kind of driving you to keep going, right?
Yeah, man. I mean, being 14 and playing to like 100 people every time I picked up an instrument was like, it's pretty fucking awesome, and definitely pretty special. And, I definitely like, you know, am grateful that I grew up where I grew up and when, so that I could be in that community and just learn from the kids that were older than me, and then eventually get into bands with people that were, 5 or 6 years older than me or whatever, and just kind of taught me how to do it. It was
Right.
awesome. I learned so much from them then, whether it was like, writing music, whether it was playing guitar, playing bass, playing drums, booking shows, whatever, just like learning how to do everything DIY for like
Mhm.
no money, just so that you could have something, you know what I mean?
That's when you know you really love it, right? When
Yeah.
money is of no object, you fully, believe in what you're doing.
Yeah,
That
man.
kind of comes as a byproduct, right? As you continue to, evolve as a musician. Now,
Of
tell me
course.
this real quick. How do you
Mhm.
get from Worcester, Massachusetts out to Nashville, Tennessee. And
Yeah.
maybe you can kind of talk about the evolution of your taste with music, because when I think of, the sound of Alana Royale to Mount Worcester to Second Spirit, they all fit in different lanes. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Yeah, for sure. So like I said, when I was a kid, I was just super into hip hop. I just loved everything about it. And eventually I started really getting into, being like, okay, like, how are they making beats? Oh, these are all samples. These are songs that already exist.
Yeah.
What's the sample? And really it was like, my first taste was like, was like Al Green and Isaac Hayes, and so those two were kind of like my starts into soul music, right? And really it was like, it was hip hop, but it was also it was also movies, and it was also finding the right song for the right mood. And I'll never forget the first time I watched Dead Presidents, and and it was Al Green. And spoiler alert for somebody that hasn't seen a movie that's over 30 fucking years old, but when Chris Tucker ODs, it's like Tired of Being Alone right there. And then at the end, when Lorenz Tate throws the chair in the courtroom, it's like, that's Walk On By. And it's like, that was really like my introduction into soul music, you know what I mean? And so that was always kind of like to the side while I was like playing in hardcore bands, because everybody I knew was in, but I always had this deep love of soul music and hip hop and black music in general. And so as I got older and whatever, I was producing records for bands in Massachusetts. I was producing all these hardcore records and whatever. And but really, and I was in college at the time. I was like, studying bass. I was doing a lot of like, learning a lot of Latin stuff, like Oster Stagnaro and like all that sort of stuff. And so, so that kind of became a part of what I was doing musically as well. And eventually I just kind of burned out on producing hardcore bands. Really, it was like, I was doing like, multiple records a year and whatever. And I was working in Boston. I was working in Worcester. I was working in at a really great studio in Woodstock, New York. Just bouncing back and forth between all three. And eventually I was just like, man, I've done this, you know what I mean? Like, I've been doing it for a long time, and I kind of just want to like do something completely different. And so eventually I just, really the plan was to move to LA. Like, my best friend had just moved from Boston to LA, and he was like, oh, I just got this great job assisting Flood and Alan Mulder off of like a Craigslist ad. Like, you got to come here, whatever. And I was like, yeah, maybe. And so that was kind of the plan. And then I went to Nashville on a whim for just like a trip through college, and was just like, yo, it's kind of dope. Like, everybody's really nice, and all the musicians here are just like really, really, really talented. And Nashville was very inspiring to me. And I had only spent like maybe 48 hours here. Just like, man, I think this might be the move,
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
really, really cool.
Yeah.
Man, it's funny because when I think of Dead Presidents, those scenes were like woke moments. I mean, you didn't see stuff on TV like that. And for a kid to have it be tied to the music, those were really powerful moments there. So I just I marveled a little bit about that when you said that. Very
and also
cool
it's like, just telling the black story too. It's like, as like a white kid from central Massachusetts, it's like, I learned maybe this much about the Vietnam War, and I did not know, that's not common knowledge. Like, what happened in Vietnam, and what happened to, black culture when everybody came back, and, and the disrespect, and what people really had to do and had to go through, just to make ends meet, for like, protecting their country. You know what I mean? It was just like,
right.
It was kind of wild,
Absolutely. So let's talk Mount Worcester.
Yeah,
The new single Contigo, I got to hear a sneak peek of it. I also listened to, I believe it's Three Streets, which you released earlier in the year. Before we
sure,
get into
yeah.
the songs, tell us how this came about, who the key players are, that started making the music and everything like that, and tell us what the music means to you.
Yeah, okay. So originally the reason why this band got together is because I was, like Royale was touring a lot and this and that, and I just kind of was looking for something a little bit fresh, a little bit new. I wanted to like play with some different musicians that weren't in our touring band and whatever.
Mm.
And so I was talking to my buddy Derek, who played the drums on Contigo and Three Streets and the rest of the album. And he is definitely like he's always been a fantastic musician. I recorded his first band when he was 12 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. And I even back then, like, we jammed in the studio, like, we played like Sissy Strut together, and he's like 12, just like hanging with the meters, and I was like, Jesus, like, who is this kid? And and so he actually moved down to Nashville from Hull, Massachusetts, which is just like right on the coast. It's actually where the clothing company Johnny Cupcakes is based out of, if you're familiar. But so he moved here. He moved into the house that I moved out of when I bought my own spot, and so we actually recorded all the drums for that in my old living room in his house. So anyway, we got into it because it was like I wanted to play with a drummer that was like, all right, we're just gonna play consistently. Like, we're gonna play an A section for 5 minutes, we're gonna play a B section for 5 minutes, and I don't want like fills. I don't want you to like change the groove. I want to just see if we can just do that. You know what I mean? And so it was just jamming with drums and bass. And eventually I was like, oh shit, this is actually kind of like, taking shape and whatever. And so so he was like, yeah, well, let's record, like, let's do something, wherever. And so we set up this like little tiny recording thing, and he had like 2 ribbon mics and a kick mic and whatever. And I was like, man, I can definitely work with that, like, whatever. And so we recorded the drums and bass in the living room, and then I came home and chopped it up and just edited everything together. And then I like overdubbed all the guitar at my house, and then I also arranged the horns on it. But that was kind of a challenging thing because I'm not a horn player, and like I learned how to arrange horns in college a little bit, but college was a long time ago, so I kind of forgot all of that shit,
Sure.
So I wrote all the guitar. I wrote all the horn parts on guitar, and then sent it to my buddy Chris Baldoni, who is a really great trombone player in town, and he's played with Alana for a long time. He's actually the trombone on Fall in Love Again. He's just like a fantastic
Wow.
dude. Yeah, yeah. And so we've been like connected like that for a long time. So I sent all that stuff to him and was just like, yo man, like, just play through all this stuff, and like, is there even space to breathe? Does this work? Like, whatever. And man, he demoed all the stuff out to me on trombone and trumpet. It was like, dude, this works. Like, let's do it. And so yeah, it was literally just like an album just pieced together like that. And it really just like, took a village. And then when it came to putting keys on it, I went with Kent Tolson, who's just this like, phenomenal live keys player. Like any song, he's one of those kind of dudes that's like, any song you could just call out, he'd be like, cool, I got it, and it's already like memorized, and you'd be like, what key you want it in, and he'll just run the whole thing like no mistakes. And it's just like,
Okay.
that kind of a dude. And and because I don't play keys, I was just like, yo, I kind of need help like writing a little bit if you want to get into it like that. And so really it was like the help of those 3 guys that really got me along and got me to like finishing this album. They put in a ton of work for sure.
Wow. Okay. Now, one thing I want to have you do is kind of describe the sound of the music because, yeah, we say, okay, it's instrumental.
Hmm.
We say funk, we say soul, a little bit of Afrobeat vibes. But I
Yeah,
think there's something about the genre bending style and how you move to all those different elements that
sure.
makes the music stand out. Just talk to us about inspiration and what you want listeners to look out for, when they're
Yeah,
listening.
yeah. You know, on the surface, it was definitely like I was, I really got into instrumental music really through like Budos Band and like Akebe
Hmm.
Shakedown. You know what I mean? Um, Also, little fun fact that I found out years later is that Jason from Akebe Shakedown is actually my distant cousin, which I did not know
What?
until I was on tour with Lee Fields in like 2018, maybe 27,
Wait a minute, wait a
2017,
minute, wait a minute.
2018.
Time out. You just said you were on tour with Lee Fields?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Alana has toured with him like 3 different times, and
Okay.
each time it's just been like some of the most memorable shows we've ever played for sure. But
Wow. Okay.
but yeah, now I remember we were doing Savannah Stopover together in 2017, and we did that, and we did like a Charlotte gig and like a couple others and whatever. And Jason and I have the same last name, and we just got to talking. And I was like, dude, I bet there's some lineage there. Like we got to sort it out. And the next time I was home, I actually went through like a family names book or whatever, and I hollered at him and was just like, "Yo, what's your great grandparents' names?" Because he told me it was from South Paris, Maine, and I was like, "Yo, that's not that far from Worcester. Like, let's figure it out." And sure enough, there was like my grandfather's name and his grandfather's name. It was like really,
Wow.
really crazy to figure out. So yeah, little fun fact for sure. But yeah, so anyway, so Budos and Akebe were like my first real like like dives into instrumental music. And that was back probably like like 2011 through like 2014 is where I was really like figuring that stuff out. But
Hmm.
I didn't want to then be like, oh, okay, I want to do something just like that. You know what I mean? Because they're like, they're some of the best to do it. So it's like I don't want it to be contrived. I don't want stuff to sound like, oh yeah, like that's a Budos riff. It's you know what I mean?
Sure.
Um, and I really wanted the sound of that to marry like my love of like hip hop sampling,
Mm.
and I also wanted it to be like as representative of like Budos as it was like Portishead at times or like whatever. And I just wanted it to be like this thing where it was like, oh, I don't have to stick in one specific genre. I don't have to stay in one lane. I can kind
Hmm.
of do whatever I want, you know what I mean? So like, so on the record there's definitely like, one tune that has like a little bit of a JB's feel, and on another song it'll be like um like a little and like deep cut vibe. There was this track called Deep Shadows that I heard like a couple years ago, and it's got this great vibraphone on it, and I was like, well shit, I know my man Kelly Finnegan has a vibraphone, let's hit him up. And so like I got him on the record. So
Oh, wow. Okay.
yeah. So yeah. So like I said, it takes a village too. It's like I got that help from literally everybody, which was awesome. It was really cool. But yeah, definitely wanted it to be like a blend of genres rather than just like, oh, I'm doing the Daptone thing or I'm doing the coal mine thing. It's like I just want to play what feels good, and then I want to like sort it out afterwards. You know what I mean? And be like, does this actually all fit together?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Now, in addition to playing, you also spent time mixing, engineering, and you did kind of hint on this, but arranging.
Mm-hmm.
What was top of mind for you when you were trying to kind of carve out that niche and keep the sound authentic?
Mm.
You mentioned in the past that you did a lot with hardcore bands and stuff like this. Was there a big shift in terms of how you had to think differently?
Absolutely. the biggest challenge really was like, we track the drums in a living room, like I said, and it was like, there was a window behind the drums, there's
Right.
drywall walls and wooden floors, and it's like, that's going to be a pretty live room, and a lot of these records that are that are coming out that are in this genre are like very tight, dry, dead drums, and I had to like kind of come back from that and tell myself like, yo, you can't do something different with the sounds you already have because they're very specific, and and you did it in such an untreated room that you just have to like sort it out.
Wow.
And so that was a huge learning process for me, especially when it was like, when I'm listening to like, other bands in the genre, and like I was listening to like Surprise Chef today, like that shit they just put on Big Crown, like it sounds unbelievable, but like when I was mixing my album, I could not listen to that band because it was not helpful at all. Because I was just like, oh, I want that tight and dry thing, and I was like, wait, but I didn't track it like that, so I'm not going to get it. You know what I mean? So I like, I kind of like backtracked my mix a little bit and kind of was like, all right, let me just lean into these like nice ribbon mics I got a hold of, and let's just make this, let's just kind of let this drum set breathe and sort of be what it is. And in the way that you would hear like drums on a jazz record, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Yeah. So instead I started paying attention to, when I would be mixing, I'd start paying attention to like Wes Montgomery albums, or I'd be paying attention to like Donald Byrd, like stuff like that, where it was like, it's not just this like, it's not just like this like really controlled thing. Sometimes it gets a little wild, and being okay with that was kind of like what I had to come around to.
Sure.
But,
sure. No, I appreciate those insights.
And like, and tracking the thing, I started really arranging this thing in like 2018. And then once March 2020 rolled around, it was like, I still had all the horns to cut for the record. So it was like,
sure,
how do we get together? How do we do this? Whatever. And so most of that was tracked remotely, and people would send me tracks back, and I would have to like produce from long distance and be like, oh, I actually like take a picture of the way your mic was angled, so like you're getting too much room sound, or you're not getting enough, or whatever. And so that was its own interesting challenge in itself. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Luckily, everyone that I hired to do it had, they had interfaces, or like I said, Chris Baldani, he lives in his recording studio, so like he was able to get me anything I wanted. It was great. My saxophone player Amber, who is like unbelievably talented, she's phenomenal on tenor sax, she's an amazing vocalist, whatever. She was like, yeah, I got like a Shure SM7. And I was like, cool, let's try and make it work. And, and we got there, and it was great. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Very interesting. So Contigo is available everywhere, streaming platforms on 513. Tell us about the name of the song, what it sounds like, and are we going to get this on vinyl?
So, all right. So vinyl, we're waiting. I'm waiting to hear like one piece of news on that, and that will decide where this is gonna go for sure.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah. So I'm literally waiting to hear back from one person about this. But when it inevitably I think it is going to be on vinyl. But it's probably going to be in like an LP format instead of just instead of 45s. A lot of the songs, like Contigo is like 5 minutes. That that doesn't fit on a 45. If I was going to do a 45 cut, I'd have to like cut off the intro, fade out the outro. You know what I mean, and cut like a good 30 seconds off. But the whole album is in mastering right now, which is great. JJ Golden is doing that. Who
we know that name.
Yeah, of course you do. Yeah, he's the best. You know what I mean? And he's like He's so great to work with. And I mean, he hit the master that you heard. That was his first try. And I was like, cool, I'm good. You know what I mean?
Right.
But yeah, so contigo is a, in Spanish, translate to English, like, roughly means with you. And, in making this album, I was really like, paying attention to, the surroundings around me, paying attention to earth, and, get my bare feet in the grass. And, mid-pandemic when we were up in San Rafael with Kelly making a record, we, hiked up the side of a mountain every morning, and, like taking pictures and just like walking the dog and whatever. And, it was like, so it was like, it's to me meant like, you're with the earth and the earth is with you. And, and just like the general community vibe of this song and this record coming together is very much, it's very much that vibe through and through, whether it's nature or the people, the people around me,
I love that. I think the connection points are so important, whether it's visuals or kind of hearing the meaning behind that. It's all something that we can relate to, and then we take that and we make memories with it.
Sure.
Now, you also have something very important coming up. You've got a show on the 16th, and you're opening for the Jizza, which is incredible. I think, we both have a love for hip hop, and it started early. So to be able to do something like this on the same stage as somebody that we've been listening to in our, Walkmans and CD players over the years, and now you're going to open up. What's the Mount Worcester experience like live, and what's your game plan going into this type of event?
Yeah, well, so my intro used to be criminology, and I was like, well, I can't do that at that show, even though that's a Raekwon song. I was just like, I don't want to touch any Woo stuff in front of those guys. You know what I mean? I do have a funny story about that I'll come back to. But so the instrumentation on this gig is going to be it's going to be me on guitar, Gabriel Golden on bass, who plays bass for Alana Royale. My buddy Scott Soifer is going to be on the drum set, who actually I had never played with before. He was a friend of Gabriel's, and he's like his martial arts instructor. And Gabriel was like, hey, Scott is actually like kind of a dope drummer. Like, you should check him out. And, we got to hang in, and he like, knew all about Wu-Tang, knew all about Dilla, but knew all about like all the deep soul shit too. And I was like, okay, we can like, we can vibe, because like
we can do
not a lot of drummers in Nashville like get that. They're like,
sure,
they know it at base level, but I'm like, I need a little bit more knowledge if I'm gonna feel safe,
right?
So we got Scott on the drums. Kent Tolson is going to be on the organ. Then we got Chris Baldani playing flugelhorn, trombone, and trumpet, depending on, he's like switching them, mid song, like that kind of thing.
Wow.
And then Amber Woodhouse is going to be on tenor sax, and my friend Emily Owens, who played flute on Contigo, is going to come through and play that song with us.
Wow.
And we actually got Alana coming up and going to do a guest vocal as well. Yeah,
wow,
so she's going to
so
sit on our tune.
special.
Yeah, so it's going to be the only tune in the set that has a vocal. But I was like, yo, you should come sing when we play with Jizza. It's going to be a good time. She was like, yeah, I should. You're right.
That's awesome.
Awesome. And it's at City Winery in Nashville, and like, Mike Simon over there, he's the talent buyer, and he's been doing some hard work diversifying that room, because that used to be just like a strictly Americana and country room. And I know it because I worked there. I waited tables at that place, and I was like, dude, I can't hear another acoustic guitar and a fucking cajon and like the funny hat. I was just like, I'm not with it. You know what I mean? And then Mike took over as the talent buyer, and he immediately, this is the second time Jizza's played there. He books, Michelle and Dignicello every Valentine's Day. He puts like Tank up in there and gets like, women throwing their underwear at him and shit. And he's like standing on stage giving like $50 bills like back to these women and shit. So, yeah, it was a wild scene to go see Tank for sure. If he comes around, even just for that, like you got to go see him. It's like, it's his like stage. He like commands the stage like that. And he's like, yeah, go get your nails done. Go get your hair done. And like dudes in the crowd are mad at him.
Yo, listen, I've heard some Tank songs. I can only imagine what it would be like to experience this in real life.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. It is sexual. It's amazing. It's so fucking good. But yeah, so Mike has done a really great job diversifying that room in a city that desperately needs spotlight on diversification for sure.
Okay. Now, I got a personal question to ask you here. This is something that I think as fans we don't always have visibility to. Talk to us about what's going through your mind. What are you feeling, hours before you're about to go on stage? The morning you wake up, it's not a regular morning. I mean, you're going to perform. This is kind of like a milestone moment, but just take us through kind of like, game day prep, what you go through on before you go on stage.
Sure. So, this is actually a thing that I've had to practice a lot of mindfulness around playing hometown shows, right? Where like you think about being on tour, and like I do probably about 98% of the driving for the Alarm Royale crew. I love driving, and I hate being a passenger. I just get like so stir crazy. And so you think about being on tour, and it's like, cool, you get up, you go find your food, you drive 4 to 8 hours to the next gig, and then you set up, you eat again, and then you play. You know what I mean? And it's like a very structured day like that, right? But when you're at home, you're like, oh, I could go to the post office, I could go to the bank, I like sometimes paint houses in my spare time. I'm like, ooh, I could get like 4 hours in at like this job, and it's like, no. You like, that's bad. You should not be doing that. And so I've practiced a lot of mindfulness around this, where I've treated show days in Nashville like normal tour days, where it's like, okay, I'm gonna get up, I'm gonna make my coffee, I'm gonna take the dog out for like a 2-3 mile walk, and then I'm just gonna go to sound check, and I'm gonna stay at the venue. I'm not gonna like be like, oh well, like I'll sound check and then I'll come home and get ready and do that, because I've done that too. And the last time I did that, I came all the way back across town, and I had to break up a dog fight on my street in between sound check and my set. And it was awful. Like it not only can I not, I can remember it like it was yesterday, but also like it was just completely distracting. My head wasn't in the game at the set and whatever. So I'm just like, no, I got to stay at the venue. I got to get my food there. And it's very much like a chill day, and very much like a for me day. Like I don't answer my phone unless it's like members of the band or my day of contact at the venue, because I'm not going to do it. I can't be like taken for a ride like that. I can't take myself for a ride like that. You know what I mean?
Totally. I love hearing that. I think it's so important to kind of know like what it's like, for an artist to go through that. I had recently done like my first time spinning. I opened up for Funkway's band, Lucky Brown, and I took the day off from work. I kind of did something similar, but like that was my bandwidth. That's what I had time for. I was so focused. I think my nerves, my mind were just thinking, what is this going to look like? What's it going to feel like? What types of challenges are we going to run into? But I wanted to make sure that even though I was just putting records on a turntable, I was able to bring the best version of myself to that time.
Right.
So again, that's just something that we overlook sometimes.
Yeah, for sure. It's like someone hired you to be there for this amount of time, and it's like, well, if you show up and your head's like here, there, and everywhere because you decided to like just like run errands that day or whatever, it's just like that's not it. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Not for me, not anymore.
Yeah.
Shout out to yoga and meditation and therapy. You know what I mean?
I'm with you on the mindfulness stuff, brother. Now,
Yeah.
let me ask you this.
Hmm.
When 2022 is all done and said,
Yeah.
what does success look like for Mount Worcester, for you as an artist? You know, you're touching other bands as well. You do
Sure.
production stuff, which, you know, I think prior to you opening up about it, I thought that was something new, kind of a stretch for you, but you wear all these different hats. Let us know
Yeah.
what success looks like, though.
Man, really, it's like success for me is very small. You know what I mean? I don't want a lot, but what I would like by the end of this year is like, you know, like the Second Spirit album released. I'm very happy about that. I'm playing, you know, a couple of shows here and there, do a couple of Mount Worcester gigs. Like I've you know, I've got this Jizzy gig. I've got some private event stuff, which is also a really cool thing because it keeps me playing music without having to be like, come see Mount Worcester. And I'm like overplaying the market or whatever, you know, so that's
Sure.
like, that's a great thing. And that's also something I've really been working towards, you know, just building up the library of songs that we can play. So it's like, yeah, you need us for like 2 hours. Sure. We could do that. You know what I mean? You know, we have a gig in Louisville, Kentucky opening for Alana, which is definitely going to be a lot of fun. So like I'm on double duty that day, and like that's going to be amazing. That's going to be really cool. So you know, by the end of the year, I'm just really hoping that I can like, you know when I'm going to get the Mount Worcester vinyl. And you know, Trash Casual out of Brooklyn, they're putting it out, which is great. They're a fantastic home for both of my other side project bands. AJ and Britt have been like truly helpful in getting this stuff off the ground. I am hoping by the end of 2022 that you know, that we've like really locked down a home for the new Royale full length. And we know what is going on with that. And then in the meantime, man, really it's just like I just want to work enough on music to like if I could just like pay my mortgage off of music, I'd be set. That's all I really need. You know what I mean? That's all I need. That's all I want right now. And really I just want to dig into like producing records more, mixing records more for people. You know, because that's something that I did so much a long time ago. And then once Royale got really busy in 2013, I kind of like pushed it to the side to put both feet in like, okay, let me be the best guitar player I could be. Let me like study songwriting. Let me like figure out really what's going on here. And now that like, you know, we're like, we have like a little bit of an easy tour season this year. So I'm like, okay, well, while I'm home, like, you know, let's mix some shit. You know what I mean? So that's kind of what's up. And, you know, I'm in my little mix studio right now. That's the vibe, you know?
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Let's see here. You know, you kind of talked about this earlier, and I'm getting the feeling that you're just constantly a student, always learning, always looking to grow.
Absolutely.
You've spent a lot of time touring over the last couple of years. You've made music with a lot of different people, and you've come in contact with even more folks from the industry. Yeah. Is there a story that you could share that you kind of hold close to the heart, whether it be maybe some sort of advice that you got or just some sort of, you know, some sort of incident situation that really moved you as a musician? You'd be willing to share with us?
Yeah, I mean, damn, I've really got so many of those, you know what I mean? But, you know, first and foremost, like every time I work with Kelly Finnegan in the studio, I learn something and I take something away from that. And he is so passionate about what he does and committed to just like making the best thing possible to support whatever song we're working on. And that's been like a true, you know, that's been like a true learning experience in and of itself, especially when I was like in California for 6 weeks in 2020, just like working every day and like, you know, co-writing stuff with him and like, you know, like really just being like, okay, what's the bare bones of this shit? And, you know, he gave us some advice like early on that was like, hey, you guys like writing songs to like play them live, or you're writing songs to write songs? And it was just kind of like a moment where I was just like, yo, that is the most sound advice I've ever gotten as a songwriter, because it's just like, the live show was always on my mind when I was writing songs. I was like, oh, we could do this horn break, we could do this like trick, and it's like, no, like what's the best for like, you know, what's going to support the vocal, what's going to support the message, you know what I mean? So definitely like first and foremost that. But I remember also opening for Lee Fields again in Macon, Georgia. We were at this like big theater that had like just reopened. It was like abandoned for like a long ass time. And I don't know if you've been to Macon before or not, but it's a vibe, man. It's like there's so much history there, but none of it is really like preserved. You know, there's like a statue of Otis Redding, and you know, we went and chilled by there, and like his music plays out of there like 24 hours a day, and you know, the Allman Brothers are out of there, and Percy Sledge, and there's like a lot of heavy people come from Macon, Georgia. But Macon is definitely one of these places that's like, it's almost like the land that time forgot. You know, it's like you can go downtown and on like, you know, granted I haven't been there in about 5 years, but it was kind of this way the last time I was there, where you would go and it would be like, all right, here's like an open business, and here's like mad abandoned businesses, and then on your next block you get another open business. And to me it was just kind of like sad, where you're in this like really historic place and the powers that be are just like, nah, we don't got to kick any money into this, we don't have to like make this special to anybody outside of Macon, you know what I mean? And also, yo, shout out to Fresh Produce Records out of Macon. Those dudes are the shit. They rep Coal Mine Records so hard, and man, I went in there one time and just like my mind was like blown with like the kind of stuff they had, and like the pricing on everything was just like wild. But anyway, and so we're playing this gig with Lee Fields, and we had a short drive that day. We were only coming from Atlanta, so both of us, you know, both of our crews only had to drive for 2 hours. And this was also back when like Vincent John from Eraserhood was playing guitar for him. So we were like, you know, we were like kicking it with Vince all day and whatever. And, you know, also the best fucking dude. But Lee and Alana are sitting in the green room, and Lee just launches into like his entire life story. And it was the most like magical thing I've ever witnessed. Like I just sat there and said nothing. And he spoke for like about 90 minutes.
Wow.
And he told Alana, that was like, every time I get on stage and every time I'm singing a song, I try and remember back to the reason why I wrote that song every single time. And we were like, yo, that is the most insane shit I've ever heard. And we played one of the best sets that we've ever played as a band at that gig. And I really do think it was like Lee's advice and like just the vibe he brought into the room. That was like, wow, like you're really teaching us lessons, and we're just sitting here learning, you know what I mean?
He gave you his why, and then it made y'all think about your why. And that is an incredibly powerful thing, because when you know that, you believe, and it's just, it happens. That's incredible.
Right. And so you talk about like, you know, going back to like the like, you know, the game day, like what's going on in your mind is exactly that. That's what I'm thinking about, is like, why am I going to play this gig? And when I get up there, am I going to do the best that I possibly can? And am I going to stay in the headspace of remembering why I wanted to do this in the first place, you know? So that's kind of really what it is.
Those are killer stories between Kelly and Lee, and I'm so glad, because when you mentioned the Lee thing earlier, I was like stuck on that for 10 minutes. I'm like, I got more questions. So thank you for sharing that.
And also shout out to Abby Simmons. I met, you know, really got to get close with her on that gig, and she was Sharon Jones' personal assistant for like forever. Okay. And then also tour managed Charles Bradley for a while. And she's just like fantastic human being. She's a Washington person, you know,
Okay.
lives in Tacoma. So after we were with you last time, we were driving down to Portland, and we had to make a stop in Tacoma to see Abby, because she's just like become a really good friend from from that Lee tour on, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Very, very
She's cool as shit. Yeah.
Well, it's now time for show and tell, my favorite part of the live stream chat. Are you
Sure.
ready?
Yeah, I'm ready.
Okay. What do you got? What do you got for us?
Man, all right. So I thought about this, right? And I know it's, I know everybody's probably seen one of these, but this P bass behind me right here,
Mm-hmm.
this is the very first real instrument that I ever bought. And I mowed lawns for like 3 summers straight to buy this guy. So just like, bought it brand new in 1998. I've since replaced the pickups, the bridge, the tuners. It's been with me through everything. It's actually like I broke one of the tuners off when one of my hardcore bands back in the day, the singer picked a fight with somebody in the crowd, and I dropped my shit because they were like, their crew like came up on the stage and they were like pushing our amps over, and like it got really serious for a second. And so like I broke some of my tuners off. Like this little spot right here.
I see that.
Yeah, it was the first concussion I ever got. I fell backwards off of a stage and my head hit the ground, and then my bass hit me in the head, and like the chunk of my bass came out from there. But this thing has been with me through everything. It's been, that was the only bass I used on the Mount Worcester record. That, it made it onto the new Alana record. Some of the tunes I actually got to play bass on because things were unsafe pre-vaccination. Our bass player Gabriel couldn't be with us, so I picked up the bass for a little bit and whatever. But this was in, this is what I use for all my hardcore bands. I was in like an indie like emo band in high school. It was perfect for that. So I know everybody's seen a P bass, but that's like the one instrument that it was really like my first thing, my like first nice instrument, and it's just been with me ever since. And so that's really my thing, like that bass has seen some shit, and also like no one else has ever worked on it. Like I learned how to work on guitars from this bass. Like I learned how to like get nice with a soldering iron so I could replace the pickups and like all of that stuff. So like set it up, intonation, like the whole deal.
What hit me the most was the fact that you said you cut lawn for like 3 summers. I used to cut lawn myself, so
Sure.
I felt that you can never let that go.
Absolutely. I was doing that shit up until like last year. My amp tech David Britton here in town, he lives around the corner, and he was like, yeah, I'll trade you lawn care work for repairing your amp. And I've got this guy down in the corner, this little this Ampeg Gemini, and
Okay.
and the and like the tremolo had gone out, and I was like, yo, I need this fixed, and I straight up don't have any money. And he was like, yeah, well, you can cut my lawn and I'll just fix it. And he was like, cool, trade me like 3 lawn cuts and I'll fix your amp. I was like, cool, done.
I love that. That's great.
Because like I'm so into the trade thing. Like I've done amp work in trade for a tattoo before. So that's like my buddy who is not with us anymore. He had like a Marshall combo, and he's like, man, I can't get it working, but I've always wanted to do like an ODB tattoo. And I was like, cool, I've always wanted an ODB portrait tattoo. And he was like, man, I'll tattoo your entire leg if you get this amp working. I was like, yep.
Wow.
So yeah. So I got this like, so Captain Morgan did my ODB tattoo on my leg.
That's so cool.
Yeah, which is actually, so remember we were talking about the Jizzle show, and I was saying I had a thing with Jizza and his crew. The last time he played City Winery was when I was still working there, and so they made me the green room server for the night. And I was like taking care of those guys and whatever, because, you know, Mike knew like, yo, Jared's the guy that needs to be taking care of the Wu-Tang guys. And so I go in there and I'm like, you know, talking to them. I'm like, man, it's fucking awesome that you're like, that you all are here, because like, I just, you know, I'm not a country guy. I'm not an Americana guy. It's great, but it's just not where my taste lies. And I showed them my ODB tattoo, and the drummer perks up and he's like, yo, that's my little brother. And it was Ramsey Jones on the drums, and that's ODB's older brother. And so we're like, and it was just like, it was such a trip to me. And then the keys player is like, yo, you're gonna have a favorite verse though. And then they hyped me into rapping Brooklyn Zoo in front of Jizza.
Oh my gosh, that's
and I am
pressure.
not a fucking rapper. I am not a rapper, but they were like, they were doing all the ad libs, and they were really hyping me up, man. They were
doing the ad libs too.
Yeah, they were doing all that shit with me, and it was wild. It was a lot of fun for sure.
That might be the highlight of the interview there. I don't know what to say, man. That's fantastic.
It was a crazy night, and the night they played there was election night 2016, and so they were doing a double show. So like the vibe was good. Everybody was like, yeah, cool, like we got this in the bag. Hillary's like winning, like whatever. And then all of a sudden, like, you know, their first set ended and they pulled up like the election stats, and they were like, oh no, what the fuck happened? And everyone's vibe completely changed. But for me, I was like, yo, I just rapped in front of Jizza. I don't give a fuck about Donald Trump. And then it didn't set in until the next day what had actually fucking happened.
Wow.
It was wild. It was a wild night, man.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, then so seeing them at that time, that's also really why I wanted to do this gig, is like, you know, Jizza tours with a full band, and you know, and it's just such a good show, you know, like all the tones on Liquid Swords, all the samples, like they do that shit so spot on. It's unbelievable. Yeah, there it is. The fucking classic, dude.
Came with the chest set and everything.
Come on. That's amazing.
It's pretty cool.
He's actually doing, after his sound check, he's going to a restaurant called Bastion around the corner that my buddy Josh owns, and he's doing like speed chess with people, and you can sign up, and he's doing like speed chess challenges for like 3 hours straight. That's
wild, man.
Yeah, so I'm gonna try and make it over there, even though I fucking suck at chess, and you know, and I'm gonna need that sound check, but I'm gonna see if I can do that.
Very dope.
Yeah.
So for my last question, this is an important one. I always like to know if there's like a special quote or mantra that you live by. I love philosophy. Stoicism is my thing. Is there a quote you have that has kind of you keep close to heart, that you often think of during challenging situations, things like that? Something that you know, share with another musician coming up, that kind of thing?
Man, that's a really good question. You know, I have, you know, so I mentioned, you know, like, you know, wellness a little bit, and I've been like, you know, deep diving into therapy a lot, you know, and when I came home from the tour that Alana Royale did with Monophonics in this past fall, I was like, you know, that tour was like, you know, like I said, it was everything I wanted to do. You know what I mean? It was just like, it was like such a good pairing. I love all those guys, Kelly, Max, Austin, like Ryan, all those guys, right? And we were out for a whole month, and
right,
when I came home, it kind of like fucked with my brain a little bit, you know, because I was just like, yo, I'm back home, but I don't really know why, and like I don't really feel like being here. I just kind of, if I had had my dog, I would have just stayed out on the road for forever, because I was just like,
Wow.
I don't really feel like going back to Tennessee, you know, like COVID numbers were nuts here, and like, you know, the government is like always tripping about something, and so I was like, man, I felt way better being in California with like the homies, and so, you know, so like I upped my therapy appointments, because I was like, yo, I feel bad, I feel down, right? And she gave me a piece of advice where every time you're like talking about a situation, replace the word but with the word and you'll always find some sort of silver lining in your situation.
Mm-hmm.
So we started saying and, not but. And I, you know, it felt silly at first, but then I was like, yo, this actually feels good, because it takes your it takes your you know, your negative energy and any sort of negative self-talk, or just any sort of negativity that's going to come out of your mouth, and immediately flips it on its head, and it's like, and this is why this fucked up situation could be a good one. You know what I mean? And so, you know, so that's a recent one, but that's really stuck with me for, you know, that sticks with me every day, man, for sure.
I love that, and I thank you for sharing that. You know, it's so interesting. A lot of this stuff, we hear a quote, and kind of like you said, it sounds silly, but that's the tip of the iceberg, right? You have to practice it, right?
Yeah.
You got to be able to execute. And then once you're kind of harnessing and managing it, then you're able to kind of give that gift to other people. I'll share one of my favorite quotes with you. Maybe you've heard it before, but this changed my life when I heard this quote. It's something that I think about often. It comes from Seneca the Younger, and it says, "The things that we fear most harm us more in our mind than in reality." And the very first time that I heard that, I kept playing it over and over again, because I thought that message was tailored just for me. Yeah. Because once I understood that, I was like, oh, we just got to get past that guy that's in the mirror there. And once we do that, you know, we're okay. You know, we build from that. You know, to your point with the silver lining, I always think like, hey, did I die? Nope. Is there a roof over my head? And it just gets easier and easier. So I think the silver lining is important. And I'm so thankful that you took the time to share that with us, because it is important, you know, especially the mindfulness. That concludes our fireside chat, man. I'm so happy you came through. I learned so much more about you than you know, what I saw out there on the internet. And so I'm glad that we were able to document this. You're doing some really exciting stuff. Thanks, I can't wait to hear more from, you know, the Mount Worcester. I don't know why I keep chopping when I go to say that, but I'm so excited. I love the sound. I think you're very unique on an indie scene where there's a lot of other instrumental bands out there. You all kind of have your own lane off to the side. And again, I'm just looking forward to more. I hope that everyone goes out and downloads it when it's available for streaming. And I want to wish you the most success on the 16th when you open up for the Jizza, man. Thank you. Any last words for our viewers before we take off?
Man, just like, go follow Mount Worcester, follow on Instagram, because I don't get bogged down in socials. I don't know how to do technology. Go follow Mount Worcester. The song is out in like 4 hours. So definitely go take a look at that. If you're into hardcore, my hardcore band Second Spirit, we put out a record called The Weight of Just Living back in December, also on Trash Casual, same label as Mount Worcester. And you know, listen to Fall in Love Again by Alana Royale. It's the last single that we put out. And we got a lot more on the way from her, man. We're waiting to get that record back from mastering right now. So JJ's putting the final touches on it right now. So we're just keeping moving, and man, just spread the love. And you know, if anybody needs to, you know, come to me for any sort of like, you know, mindfulness, anything, or if y'all are, you know, bogged down by what's going on in the government and Roe v. Wade right now, like, yo, I'm a shoulder to lean on for sure. Just like, come through.
I know what I remembered. Go check out the book, The Heart Math Solution. I think you'll appreciate that. If you like mindfulness and little like life hacks and things like that. That's a good one.
What is it? What is it called?
The Heart Math Solution.
Okay, cool. Yeah, we'll do for sure.
All right, brother. Thank you so much. Have a fantastic night.
Dude, hey, same to you. Thank you so much for having me on. It was an honor, for real.
Absolutely. Waxvillain, Seattle, Washington. We're out, everybody. Take care.
Later.